She was a great collector. Queen Mary's taste and her ability to work with jewels and master craftsmen shaped the face of the British jewel box for a century. Many of her pieces are still alive today. We recognize them in portraits and at modern state events. But what about those that were sold, dismantled, or have lain for decades in the silence of the vaults? Today, I will unfold the stories where the brilliance was met with a pause, and sometimes with emptiness. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. When we speak of the great collectors of royal jewels, there is one name that resonates with a unique authority: Queen Mary. She was more than just a wearer of magnificent gems. She was the architect of the modern British collection as we know it. Her eye for history, her passion for design, and her unsentimental approach to alteration shaped the royal jewel box for a century. Nothing in her collection was ever truly static. She saw potential where others saw a finished piece. A necklace could become a tiara, pendants from a stomacher could find new life on a diadem, and brooches were constantly being reimagined. She worked directly with the great jewelry houses, not merely as a client, but as a true curator, building meaningful parures that conveyed the full weight and splendor of the monarchy. It's what I find so fascinating when looking at her portraits. You can see a jewel worn one way in an early photograph, only to spot its central element transformed into something entirely new years later. She was truly a master of her craft. But for every famous tiara that still graces a state banquet today, and for every diamond that continues to tell its story, there is another piece with a quieter, more complex fate. Behind the well-documented legacy lies a shadow collection, a trail of jewels that were sold, gifted away, dismantled, or have simply vanished from public view. These are the stories we rarely hear. Today, we are stepping away from the familiar spotlight. We will follow the faint, fascinating trail of the treasures that, for one reason or another, disappeared from the frame. What happens to these magnificent pieces when the great collector is gone? And why do some of them fall silent for decades? Our journey begins with a parure of amethysts whose story is as rich and winding as the royal lineage it represents. Some jewels carry the memory of a single owner. Others carry the weight of dynasties. Queen Mary's amethyst parure belongs firmly to the latter. Its story begins not with Mary, but long before, in the collection of one of Britain's most formidable matriarchs, Queen Charlotte. This gives the set a truly incredible depth. These aren't just beautiful stones, they are stones that witnessed the court of King George III. Through a winding path of inheritance that led through the German royal houses, specifically via Princess Catherine of Württemberg, this magnificent suite of amethysts and diamonds was bequeathed to the then Duchess of York in the late 1890s. We see it in early photographs of a young Queen Mary, the tiara sitting proudly, the deep purple stones a perfect complement to the fashions of the age. And then, for many years, she seems to have set it aside. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Perhaps the style felt a little too grand or old-fashioned for a modernizing monarchy, only for her to rediscover its classic beauty in her later years, when she was photographed wearing it again in the 1930s and 40s. But after Queen Mary's death in 1953, the parure's journey takes a dramatic and mysterious turn. Who exactly inherited it is where the story becomes a little hazy. The parure was passed to a member of her family, possibly the Queen Mother, or perhaps, as is often rumored, to Princess Margaret. But its new owner was never publicly confirmed. And with that, the clear, well-documented provenance begins to fade. The parure, which had seen the inside of palaces for nearly 2 centuries, simply vanished from the public eye. For decades, it was completely silent. Then, in the 1980s, the silence was broken. The parure resurfaced, not at a glittering palace ball, but under the stark, unforgiving lights of an auction house. It had been discreetly sold. We don't know who made that difficult decision or why, but it's a poignant reminder that even for the royal family, circumstances can change, and heritage sometimes finds its way onto the open market. But the story doesn't quite end there. which is what makes these jewel histories so compelling. One piece of this historic parure made a dazzling, unexpected comeback. In 2007, the beautiful amethyst and diamond necklace was seen worn by none other than the editor-in-chief of Vogue, Anna Wintour, likely on loan for a gala event. From Queen Charlotte's court to Queen Mary's collection, through a mysterious chapter of private royal ownership, and finally to a titan of modern fashion. The tiara itself remains missing, its whereabouts a puzzle for us jewel detectives. But the necklace's brief return to the spotlight is a testament that even when a royal jewel is sold, its remarkable story is never truly over. Our next piece is a fascinating one, a delicate diamond bandeau with a story worthy of a detective novel. For years, this was a ghost in the royal collection, a jewel many of us knew from old photographs, but whose fate was a complete mystery. I'm talking about the diamond lozenge bandeau. It has this wonderful, clean, geometric pattern of diamond lozenges. It's a design that feels so quintessentially of its time, the early 20th century, and it bears the subtle maker's marks of the masters at Cartier. Queen Mary wore it beautifully, often with pearls topping the frame, for theater outings and film premieres. It was one of those elegant, understated pieces, perfect for an evening out. The bandeau then passed to a new generation, becoming one of the very first tiaras worn by a young Princess Margaret. She wore it for her tiara debut in the Netherlands in 1948, looking every bit the fairy tale princess. It seems to have been a go-to piece for her in her youth, appearing at several state visits in the early 1950s. And then, silence. After the early 1960s, the tiara simply vanished from view. For decades, jewelry watchers like us were left to wonder. Was it tucked away deep in the vaults, or had it been quietly sold, its story ending there? This was one of the great unsolved cases. And then, in one of the most exciting jewelry discoveries of recent years, the mystery was solved. The trail led not to a dusty vault in London, but thousands of miles away to the royal collection of Pahang in Malaysia. It turns out the tiara had been discreetly sold by Princess Margaret sometime around the 1980s. In 1988, it was purchased in New York by the then Crown Princess Aziza on the wonderful suggestion of a Thai princess. The connection was only recently made when sharp-eyed royal watchers noticed the striking similarity, a theory that Queen Aziza herself has since excitedly confirmed. It's a wonderful reminder that sometimes the lost treasures aren't lost forever. They're just waiting for their next chapter to be discovered. If some jewels are defined by their steadfast presence in the main royal line, others tell a more bittersweet story of dispersal, a journey through different branches of the family until their grand legacy exists only in photographs and memories. Such is the tale of the magnificent Cambridge sapphire parure. This was a truly historic suite, and its journey begins with Princess Augusta of Hesse Castle, who became the Duchess of Cambridge when she married a son of King George III. She was an important figure at court, and this parure, with its tiara, necklaces, brooches, and bracelets, was a key part of her grand jewel collection. As was so often the tradition, the sapphires were passed down as a wedding gift in 1843 to her own daughter, another Augusta, who married into the German Grand Ducal family of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. For nearly 70 years, the sapphires remained with her, a glittering link back to her British roots. And then, as so many great jewels did, the Cambridge sapphires found their way to Queen Mary. They were bequeathed to her by her beloved aunt, the Grand Duchess, in 1916. And of course, true to her nature, Mary couldn't resist putting her own stamp on it. She had the parure reconfigured, adding and altering pieces to match her vision. I always find this part of a jewel's story so interesting. It becomes a living thing, evolving with each owner. But Queen Mary didn't hold on to the sapphires for long. In 1934, she presented the entire magnificent set as a wedding gift to her new daughter-in-law, Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, upon her marriage to Prince George, the Duke of Kent. This was perhaps the parure's most glamorous era. Princess Marina adored these sapphires. She wore them frequently for portraits and state occasions, and the suite became synonymous with her elegant, regal style. For decades, they were one of the great sights of the British royal family. But after Princess Marina's passing in 1968, the story of the sapphires takes a much quieter, more difficult turn. The parure was inherited by her son, the current Duke of Kent, and his wife, Catherine. And at some point, for financial reasons, a difficult decision was made. The original splendid tiara was the first major piece to be sold. It was a heartbreaking loss for the integrity of the set. In its place, the Kents had a new, more modest button-style tiara created using sapphire clusters from other parts of the parure. It was a creative, if perhaps less grand, solution. Sadly, that was only the beginning. Over the following years, more pieces were sold off. The necklace, the stomacher, and likely other elements as well. A complete parure that had once spoken with a single, magnificent voice was now scattered, its pieces telling their own separate stories in private collections around the world. So, after this long and winding blue route, what, if anything, has survived intact? That is the question that haunts this once great collection. Among the mountain of wedding gifts presented to the future Queen Mary in 1893, some pieces stand out not just for their beauty, but for the mystery that now surrounds them. One such gift came from the first Duke of Westminster, one of the wealthiest men in the entire country, so you can imagine it was something quite special. It was a delicate jeweled necklace, its design distinguished by a beautiful, repeating laurel leaf motif. It's a very classic, elegant design that has a timeless appeal. But as we know with Queen Mary, a jewel's first form was rarely its last. She saw potential everywhere. She soon had the necklace mounted on a frame, transforming it into a chic, fashionable bandeau-style tiara, which was very much in vogue at the time. And for a brief, shining moment, this tiara had its time in the spotlight. We see it in a series of striking portraits taken around the time of her husband's accession in the early 1910s. She looks so regal wearing it, a delicate frame of diamonds in her hair. And then, nothing. After those early photographs, the Westminster laurel leaf bandeau simply disappears from the historical record. It doesn't appear on her again, nor on any other member of the family. It's one of the most baffling disappearances in her collection. Was it dismantled, its diamonds repurposed for another, grander project? That was certainly her way. Or could it be resting quietly in a box deep within the vaults, waiting to be rediscovered? We just don't know. It's a true royal mystery. Now we turn to a piece that carries with it a whisper of imperial romance and revolution, a jewel that shines with a particularly enigmatic light. This is the sapphire sunray bandeau. It's a beautiful, delicate tiara, shaped almost like a small kokoshnik with a sunray pattern of diamonds, all centered on a magnificent sapphire that could also be detached and worn as a brooch. But what makes this bandeau so compelling is its possible, and I must stress, unconfirmed history. One of the most fascinating theories about its origin, proposed by respected royal historians, is that it has a Russian soul. The suggestion is that this tiara once belonged to the Dowager Empress Marie Feodorovna of Russia. If true, it means this jewel is a survivor, a piece of Romanov splendor that made its way to Queen Mary's collection after the tragic fall of the Russian Empire. We don't have definitive proof, but the idea that this sunray escaped such a dark chapter of history is a truly powerful thought. What we do know for certain is its life in the British royal family. After being worn by Queen Mary, it was passed to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And here we have another little mystery. The Queen Mother was never photographed wearing it. Instead, the tiara found its moment to shine again on her younger daughter, Princess Margaret. Throughout the 1950s and into the early 60s, it became one of her signature tiaras. She wore it everywhere, from a glamorous tour of the Caribbean to state visits at home. It suited her perfectly, looking so modern and chic. It was a jewel that was well and truly alive. And then, After those vibrant years, the sunray seemed to set on this tiara for good. After the early 1960s, it completely vanished from the public stage. For more than half a century, there has not been a single glimmer of it. We last saw it on a dazzling princess, a star of the royal family, and then absolute silence. It's another tantalizing cold case. Next, we have a jewel of almost staggering proportions, a piece that evokes the full, formal grandeur of a bygone era, a magnificent pearl and diamond stomacher. For those of us who adore antique jewelry, the word stomacher itself is exciting. It speaks of a time when jewels were not just accents, but central architectural elements of court dress. This particular piece was a true family heirloom with a very personal connection to Queen Mary. It came to her through her mother, the beloved Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck, who had inherited it from her own aunt, Princess Mary, Duchess of Gloucester. And we know how deeply proud Queen Mary was of her Cambridge and Teck lineage, so a jewel with this direct link to her mother would have been treasured. She wore it with such pride, a cascade of pearls and diamonds that spoke to her own royal heritage. But here is where the story takes a fascinating turn, and we enter the realm of brilliant jewelry detective work. There is a well-regarded theory that this stomacher played a secret, supporting role in the creation of one of the world's most famous tiaras. The theory goes that when Queen Mary commissioned the Lover's Knot tiara in 1913, some of the exquisite pearl pendants from this very stomacher were temporarily borrowed to hang from the diamond arches. The idea that she would move perfect pearls from one family treasure to complete another is peak Queen Mary, isn't it? So practical, so focused on achieving the perfect result. The story continues that the original pearls were eventually returned to the stomacher. But this incredible detail also leaves us with the biggest question of all. After this moment, the stomacher as a whole vanished from the public record. Does this magnificent waterfall of pearls and diamonds still exist today, complete and intact, resting in the quiet of the royal vaults? It's a question that, for now, remains tantalizingly unanswered. Now, we often think of Queen Mary's jewels in terms of dazzling white diamonds and historic tiaras, but she also had a wonderful appreciation for the rare and the unusual. And that brings us to a trio of brooches featuring one of the most enchanting gems in the natural world, the conch pearl. For those not familiar, these aren't your typical oyster pearls. They are incredibly rare, they cannot be cultured, and they possess this beautiful, soft pink hue, sometimes with a delicate flame-like pattern just beneath the surface. They are true treasures of the sea, and Queen Mary had 3 of them, each set in a distinct diamond brooch. And she absolutely adored them. Unlike the grand stomachers reserved for state occasions, these were her trusted companions for day wear. We see them pinned to her signature hats at public events like the Wimbledon finals, adding a perfect touch of soft color to her ensemble. There's also a particularly poignant photograph from the 1942 christening of her grandson, Prince Michael of Kent, where she is wearing them. They were clearly personal favorites, not just vault dwellers. But like so many sets, after Queen Mary's death, this trio was destined to be broken up, and their paths diverged in a truly fascinating way. 2 of the brooches were passed down to her only daughter, Princess Mary, the Princess Royal and Countess of Harewood, staying within a branch of the family. But the third one? It took a much more mysterious route and vanished from sight for many, many years. And then, just recently, it made a dramatic reappearance. It surfaced on the open market for sale at the Fine Arts Gallery MS Rao. It's quite a moment, isn't it? To see a piece worn so often by Queen Mary, a jewel that witnessed private family moments and public events, suddenly move from her personal wardrobe to a dealer's vitrine. It's a perfect illustration of how a royal legacy can continue, not as a single story, but as many different threads, each one with its own unique and unpredictable destination. Let's turn now to a tiara that isn't so much lost as it is sleeping. It's a piece with one of the most direct and personal connections to Queen Mary's heritage, and yet it has remained tantalizingly out of sight for generations. This is the story of the Teck crescent tiara. Its journey begins, as the name suggests, with Queen Mary's mother, the formidable Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck. She created this tiara from diamonds she had inherited from her aunt, the Duchess of Gloucester, so it was a family legacy from its very inception. I've always been charmed by its design. It features 3 beautiful wild diamond roses nestled among a whole series of diamond crescents. And what's so clever about this piece is that the crescents are versatile. They can be worn facing forwards or backwards, a small detail that shows the wonderful thought that went into its construction. After Mary Adelaide's death, the tiara eventually found its way into her daughter Queen Mary's magnificent collection. Mary, in turn, passed it to her daughter-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, the future Queen Mother. And while the Queen Mother did wear it on a few occasions, particularly in the years before the war, it was never one of her go-to pieces. It seemed destined to be one of the quieter residents of the royal vault. And here is where the story gets truly intriguing for us today. After the Queen Mother's death, the tiara was inherited by Queen Elizabeth II, who made it available to the now Queen Camilla. It remains at her disposal today, though she has yet to wear it publicly. It remains one of the great sleeping beauties of the royal collection, a treasure that we know exists, and we are all waiting, hoping that one day soon it will finally be woken from its long slumber. Some jewels have a secret identity, a hidden talent for transformation, and our next piece is a master of the art. The Teck diamond hoop necklace is a jewel that has lived 2 lives, one as a spectacular necklace and another as a glittering, modern-looking tiara. Its story begins in the mid-19th century, and it was a signature piece for Queen Mary's mother, Princess Mary Adelaide. We see it in so many of her grand portraits, often paired with her magnificent Teck crescent tiara, but she knew of its versatility and wasn't afraid to use it. Photographs from the 1880s show her wearing the hoops mounted as a tiara. In another instance, for the spectacular Devonshire House Ball of 1897, she wore it as a dazzling ornament pinned to her dress. I love looking at the detail of this piece. It's composed of these 22 interlocking diamond hoops, each with a larger diamond at its center. It's a design that is both bold and incredibly graceful. Like the crescent tiara, the necklace eventually came into Queen Mary's collection and was then passed to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. She, too, embraced its second identity, frequently having the diamond hoops mounted on a frame to create a chic, low-profile tiara perfect for a night at the theater. In 1960, the necklace began a new and very glamorous chapter. It was likely given as a wedding gift to Princess Margaret, and for her, it was always a necklace. Throughout the 60s and beyond, it became a staple of her dazzling evening looks, the perfect accompaniment to grand tiaras like the Poltimore. It framed her face beautifully. And this is where the jewel's public story, for now, comes to a close. After Princess Margaret's death, the necklace was not sold. It was not returned to the main royal collection. Instead, it was passed down to her son, David Armstrong Jones, the 2nd Earl of Snowdon, in whose private collection it remains today. It has made that rare and final transition from a court relic worn by queens and princesses into a piece of private family history. After all this talk of grand tiaras and historic parures, let's take a moment to look at something much smaller, but in many ways, far more personal. We travel back to a moment of great hope and celebration for the monarchy, December of 1891. The future of the throne seemed secure as Queen Victoria's grandson, Prince Albert Victor, became engaged to the lovely Princess May of Teck. Queen Victoria herself was, in her own words, quite delighted. To mark this joyful occasion, she gave May a truly heartfelt and personal gift. It wasn't a grand tiara, but something much more intimate, a beautiful gold chain bracelet. The design was pure romance, centered on a pair of heart-shaped moonstones surrounded by diamonds, symbolically tied together forever beneath a delicate jeweled ribbon bow. It was a symbol of a bright new beginning, a tangible expression of the Queen's affection and her blessing on a match she had so wished for. It was a symbol of a bright new beginning, a tangible expression of the queen's affection and her blessing on a match she had so wished for. This little bracelet remains a touching and poignant reminder of a royal romance that was, so tragically, cut short with the prince's sudden death just weeks later. And of course, as history would have it, destiny had another path for Princess May. She would go on to marry his younger brother, the future King George V, making this delicate gift from Victoria a memento from the very first chapter of her extraordinary journey to becoming queen. Our final pieces are not just jewels, but relics of history, each one marking a pivotal moment in Queen Mary's life and the life of the monarchy itself. We begin in the sun-drenched summer of 1909, during the famous Cowes Week regatta on the Isle of Wight. It was a spectacular family gathering as King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra played host to their Russian relations, Tsar Nicholas II, Tsarina Alexandra, and their children. The two families were, of course, closely related, and the visit was a happy blend of state diplomacy and personal affection. Amid the sailing and society events, gifts were exchanged. The Tsar and Tsarina presented the Princess of Wales, our Mary, with a truly exquisite souvenir of their visit, a beautiful amethyst and diamond brooch. Attributed to the legendary house of Faberge, the design is breathtaking. It features a large, hexagonal Siberian amethyst of the most intense purple hue, framed in diamonds and topped with a delicate, diamond-set ribbon bow. It's a piece of immense artistry and cleverly designed, too. It could be worn either as a brooch or as a pendant. But this jewel is so much more than just a beautiful object. It is a time capsule. This happy family gathering on the Isle of Wight was one of the very last times the British and Russian royal families would meet before the First World War tore the Old World apart. In just a few short years, the family who gave this glittering gift would be gone forever. Knowing that, the brooch is transformed from a simple diplomatic present into a deeply poignant memento of a lost world. So, after all these stories, what are we left with? It's not a neat and tidy conclusion, is it? We started with the grand figure of Queen Mary, a woman who seemed to hold history itself in her hands. But looking at these lost and forgotten pieces, you realize that no collector, not even a queen, can control the future. I find it fascinating that jewels, these solid, enduring things, can have such fluid and unpredictable lives. Some, like the lozenge bandeau, go on a great adventure, only to be rediscovered in the most unexpected of places. Others, like the tech hoop necklace, seem to take a quiet step back, preferring a private life after decades in the spotlight. It's almost as if they've earned a peaceful retirement. And then there are the true ghosts in the collection. The Westminster laurel leaf, the sapphire sunray. They leave behind nothing but a beautiful photograph and our own imagination. They remind us that sometimes a legacy is also defined by what is absent. The space a jewel leaves behind tells its own powerful story. These are the pieces that make you lean in a little closer, the ones that keep us wondering. And for me, that quiet mystery is just as compelling as the most dazzling diamond on public display. If you've enjoyed spending this time with me, exploring these quieter, more mysterious paths, please consider supporting the video with a like and a subscription. I so appreciate you joining me for our cup of tea and for the wonderful stories we get to uncover together.